My name is Tony Silvia. Some of you, none of you actually know me, do you? Well, no, actually, no, I'm sorry. You know me. You were a student in one of my classes. As a matter of fact, right over there at the Poynter Institute. We did a course over there, that grad course. You were in that, weren't you?
We didn't do it over there. We actually did it in the classroom.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was a different class.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, in any case, this is Willie, and I'm Tony. And, I just did a Zoom with some people last night on a whole different subject that shall remain nameless, but it had to do not with media or journalism. It had to do with Shakespeare. And that's because it took me a lot of years to not feel like an imposter in the field of journalism, because my degrees are all in Shakespeare, master's and PhD from the University of Birmingham, not Birmingham, in Great Britain. And I did that back in part of my misspent 20s, but that was the best part that I spent. So I'm actually consulting with a theater company now. We're going to do Romeo and Juliet in August. So you see, it's never too late. Even 50 years later, you can come back around to whatever it is you studied. So for those of you who aren't going to be journalists immediately, don't be surprised at yourself if you become a journalist 50 years from now. And it will have changed, as we'll talk about today, in ways that we can't even visualize at the moment. I want to start by asking you folks all a question. How many of you have voice activation in your automobiles? Anybody? Raise your hands. Okay. Voice activation, you know what that is, right? You talk to your car, and your car changes the stations on the radio or punches up whatever music you're streaming, or adjust the climate to your like, or, hopefully your like, not your dislike. How many of you have an Echo Dot in your home? Okay. How many of you have more than one? Okay. How many of you have an appliance of any kind in your home or your apartment or your parents' home or apartment that is called has a so-called title of a smart appliance or a smart device? How many? Okay. All right. So you're all intimately acquainted with artificial intelligence, aren't you? Because you realize that in your car, in the dashboard, there is nobody named Siri. There is not a human being there. You realize that when you are talking to your Google device, whether it's a Google Home device or whether you're using your Amazon Dot, you realize that the person who is speaking to you is not a person. It's a bot. And the bot is responding to whatever it is that you want from the bot, correct? Okay, so you're already very, very acquainted with artificial intelligence. So when I wrote this book, Artificial Intelligence in Journalism, Changing the News, I started from the premise that even though the news media want us to believe that this is such a new thing, it's brand new. It's not new at all. It's been around for a long time, really long time. And if you so choose to pick up the book, or Professor Reichel, decides to adopt it for a class, yeah, you will read about the history of artificial intelligence, and it didn't begin yesterday. And I think you'll be surprised at how long it has been around. Why is everybody so right now preoccupied with artificial intelligence, and why in the world are some people so afraid to the point of being terrorized by the thought of it? It's not a rhetorical question. I'd like to answer it maybe before the end of our time together. And if I don't answer it, ask me again at the end during the Q&A period, because I'd like us to actually discuss that. I think it's an important thing to discuss. Let me suggest to you that all new technology is terrifying to a lot of people. Why? Well, the Poynter Institute over there's a lady named Jill Geisler who I did some talks with along the way. And Jill is a management person, and she advises newsrooms and other organizations. And, you know, she has this saying that I quoted many, many times. The problem with change is it makes us feel temporarily incompetent. I'll say it again. The problem with change is it makes us feel temporarily incompetent. We're afraid immediately because it's not the known. It's the unknown. Sound familiar with artificial intelligence? Pretty much, right? I want to read to you just from the preface. I don't believe in doing these things and reading the book, but sometimes it's just a good way to set something up. And this is from the preface in the book. And I'm not going to be hokey and say close your eyes, okay? Even though the preface says close your eyes. Not asking you to do that. Close your eyes. Listen closely. What don't you hear as you enter that space once known as a newsroom? Maybe it's the New York Times or the Washington Post. Maybe it's CNN or NBC. What's missing? People, reporters, editors, researchers, storytellers. Flash forward. It's now 2030. If the experts' predictions are correct, that silence is, to use a cliche that skilled writers try to avoid, deafening. Where did all those voices go? Those magnificent purveyors of information that sometimes rose to the level of wisdom. The gaggle of, well, a gaggle, that assembly of human beings bringing not only sound, but also voice to an audience. Maybe it wasn't one voice, but many voices, each unique, each bringing different perspectives to the same narrative. It is narrated. Who does the narrating? The answer is a tale of then, now, and next. Each individual in that long ago news space looked at what we once called facts through a unique lens, shaped by one's own experiences, skills, and talents. Yes, sometimes that lens would be discernibly blurred. Readers knew that. Viewers knew that, or they used to think they did, because the trail that led to their consumption of information called news passed through human brains, hands, and hearts. Accuracy, accountability, and trust. There's nothing artificial about any of those concepts. All, among others, are components of what we historically accept as major tenets of journalism. Each depends upon the exercise of judgment. Traditionally, that's where experienced editors and reporters come in. They provide not only knowledge, but also context, connections that extend much farther than the distance between the finger and the keyboard, or at least when they do their job well. It's not a mechanical process, and at its highest level, there is nothing artificial about it at all. It's born of time, experience, learning, adaptation, and innovation. It encompasses information gleaned from the past, but hopefully also adds to the repository of human knowledge. But it's to 2030, and that news space, what we once called a newsroom, is quiet, still, haunted, but for one brain stem, not really a brain, but a wholly different kind of space, populated by the work of humans, but not, in and of itself, very human at all. That's artificial intelligence. Now, how many of you, and give me a show of hands, how many of you have ever read a news story and thought to yourself, I'm not sure that was written by a human? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're getting a bandwagon here. But truthfully, you've all suspected that, right? I know the camera's not going to be on you, but I'm going to hear you. So tell me, what have been the telltale signs for you? Does it have anything to do with the departure from what I just read from the preface? Were there telltale signs? Were there tells that you would say, okay, I know this, there was no human being involved here? Anybody? Willie?
I think it has more to do with what's left out
Okay.
of stories. You know, there's often context left out.
Okay. Context. Huh. That's really interesting, because context, I constantly preach this holy grail. That context is what maybe separates bots from humans. But I don't know for how long. Because it took the internet a very long time to get to where it is today. Relatively speaking, AI has made advances. What did we start about 10 minutes ago? AI has made advances since we've all been here. And we don't even know what they are. We'll find out eventually. But that's the rapidity of the change in technology. It makes the internet look like it was a slow development. So maybe context is on the horizon. Maybe so. Are there things that you think AI can do better, or at least as good, and maybe even better in journalism than human beings could? I like to give a lot of questions. I believe in the Socratic method. I like questions. I learn from questions. I hope you do too. Yeah, Willie?
It would be nice if AI could actually do a better job of copy editing
Okay.
than we see.
Copy editing is one thing, and Willie says maybe AI could do better.
Than we see at least in the print editions
Okay.
these days. There's so many errors.
Okay. Please tell me your name.
Jamaica.
One more time.
Jamaica.
What's your take on this?
I think that, especially when you're writing a feature piece, like you're more capturing, the background noise or a click of a pen or something like that, that I don't think that a bot can translate onto paper. You know what I mean?
I do know what you
Yeah.
mean, but I also know there's something that AI does called facial recognition, and you know it too,
Sure.
right? You see it when you use an ATM. You see it when you do a lot of things in your everyday life. Maybe you don't see it, but it's there. I'm reading you right now in a human way. I'm watching your eyes. I'm watching your lips. I'm watching your demeanor. I'm watching how you're sitting. I'm watching whether you're sitting forward or leaning. That's usually what we tell journalism students they should do, because they should interview people in person, not by email, right? You probably tell people that. And I always told people that. And I still believe that for the most part. But I'm not so sure. Couldn't AI do an equally good evaluation of a source? Maybe AI could do a better job of copy editing, because, boy, there's a lot of bad copy editing out there. I see eyes rolling. Yes, Teddy.
Yeah, this may relate to what you and Lily were saying about context, but AI does a really crappy job of reading images. It might do okay with facial recognition, but in terms of substituting for text or audio description, text audio description is everything bad. AI is awful. It's like it gets the veneer, but it doesn't get the deep meaning.
Right.
What's going on in a picture.
And what about sometimes it just, because the term is scrape, right? Scrape means that AI takes all the knowledge that's out there and scrapes the internet and finds stuff and puts it together. Okay? And Denny, I think, if I'm hearing you correctly, physically as well as mentally right now, I think you're saying that not doing a good job in every instance with
I'm
that.
saying it's scraping a quarter inch.
Scraping a quarter inch, not there's no depth.
Right.
Yeah, there's a quarter inch. I got you, and I think that's very true. You know what? Let me share something with you. I decided at the end of the book to then use ChatGPT to tell me two things. One, give me an outline for this book. And not going to go into the whole thing there, but I will go into another example of when I used ChatGPT. It basically, and I'm going to admit this, if I had used it initially before I started writing, I think it'd be a better book. Not because AI would have written the book for me, but because it gave me a better outline. The outline was really good. And I almost wanted to call my publisher and say, look, I know we're behind. Could we just, I want to do what AI says I should have done in the first place. Now, I'm not sure if that's a compliment to AI or it's a detriment to me, but I will tell you that the outline was pretty thorough and it was pretty damn good. Now, on the other hand, I decided toward the end of this thing to do my own little experiment. And my own little experiment involved looking at a review of a previous book of mine. I wanted to know what a bot could tell me about my previous book, which was called Journalism in the Pandemic. Okay. And some people in this room, actually Denny, for one, contributed to that book. Dr. Elliott in the back there. So here's what I did. I figured I would use, I directed ChatGPT to tell me something about my book, titled Journalism in the Pandemic, Essays on Adaptation and Innovation. Within about 30 seconds, the following appeared on my laptop screen. With the title, correct. Once upon a time in the tumultuous year of 2020, Dr. Tony Silvia, a distinguished professor of journalism and digital communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg, embarked on a groundbreaking literary journey. Faced with the unprecedented challenges posed by the global pandemic, he decided to document the resilience and innovation within the field of journalism during these trying times. Journalism in the Pandemic, Essays on Adaptation and Innovation is a collection that emerged from Dr. Silvia's deep insights. I can almost not read this with a straight face. Deep insights and the collective efforts of journalists worldwide. The book became, this is my favorite part, you ready? A beacon of hope, showcasing how the profession adapted to the new normal and continued to fulfill its crucial role in society. Wow. I mean, I'm hooked. I don't know about you, but I'm hooked. The essays within the book delve into, we're not done, there's a lot more. The essays within the book delve into various aspects of journalism, exploring the rapid transformation of newsrooms, the embrace of digital technologies, the ingenious ways reporters found to connect with their audiences. Dr. Silvia curated a diverse array of perspectives, featuring contributions from seasoned journalists, emerging talents, and industry experts. I'm going to skip down, but this is, again, part of my favorite thing here. I want this on my tombstone. The book became a source of inspiration for journalism students, professionals, and anyone interested in the dynamic landscape of media during times of crisis. It celebrated the spirit of innovation, blah, blah, blah. It became a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the power of storytelling to bridge gaps, inform, and unite communities. Wow, wow, wow. After that, I wrote, wow. That sounds like a pretty important book. After all, according to AI, it was vital in capturing a pivotal moment in the history of journalism. While I couldn't help appreciating the accolades, the hyperbole and exaggeration of my work was disturbing. If only because, while largely factual, so much of it exaggerated, my ego aside, the book's significance. That, however, wasn't what I found to be most disturbing. At the bottom of my requested story was this. Note, the story above is a fictional creation based on the given title, as I don't have specific details about a real book with that title. Isn't that fabulous? Wow. That's fabulous. So, never read the book. And I don't know, talk about a half inch of scraping. I don't know anywhere on the internet, and I haven't tried very hard, but I don't know anywhere on the internet where people said those kinds of things. So there's a certain amount of invention there. But what did I ask it to do? Okay, it's all in the question. How did I prompt it? Because if I prompted it and I said something along the lines of, tell me all about myself and how great I am, including my book called Journalism in the Pandemic, I got back exactly what I asked for. And that's a problem with AI, isn't it? It gives us exactly what we asked for. So if we're not asking the right things, we're going to get stuff back that echoes what it is we already wanted and what we already believe in the first place. Willie?
In terms of your outline of your book,
Yeah.
you asked the question on the same machine that you wrote the book. I noticed when I did something with ChatGPT and asked it to write a curtain speech for me,
Right.
it pulled things from my background, from things on my computer that I did not give it.
That's interesting.
And it did a fine job of what what it gave me, and I edited it down. But it pulled information
Yeah.
that existed.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the great outline that it gave you was based on the material that you created and said, based on what I see in the book,
Right. Right.
this might have been a better way to organize it.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I hadn't thought about it. It's a great insight. I did not think about that. That in the background on the computer where I was writing, the bot could have grabbed all sorts of source material and said, okay, well, here's a better way to do it. Had not given that any thought at all. So that's a great insight. I think it's very possible. I mean, we all know that there's always something in the background, right? That's scraping our personal information. Let's put it that way.
The worst part of it is that in the speech that it wrote me, it also quoted something that I didn't put in writing,
Yeah.
that I have said many times.
Wow.
And that was very disturbing.
I bet it was. Yeah. I mean, that's, it's, how do I put this? I'm going to use a Shakespeare quote. Is that okay? All right. See, I'm in the Shakespeare state of mind these days. Nothing is either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. I'm going to adapt it to this conversation. Nothing is either truthful or false, but good or bad actors make it so. Why do I say that? Because this is a really benign application. We all laugh about it and joke about it, right? And obviously so. And why not? But having said that, what if somebody takes information, and we know this happens, and turns it into misinformation or disinformation? That's one of the biggest fears in journalism. I would contend in society that we should have. Because there are a lot of people, whether they're on the political spectrum or other spectrums, you can fill in the blank, that want to mislead people with their own version of the truth. And AI makes that so easy. I was thinking the other day, when I was on a faculty at a different university way back when, everybody was experimenting with Photoshop. Photoshop, is that something you still have, or you still do? Okay, because I'm not aware of that. Okay, I'm seeing enough nods. So everybody was experimenting with Photoshop. And one day, the campus newspaper had a photo of me with another faculty member who, well, let me put it to you this way. We were not the closest of friends. And for some reason, they thought it would be really funny for their April Fool's, April 1st edition, to put the two of us together in a very, let's say, friendly manner. Not only raised a lot of eyebrows, it raised a lot of anger on the part of myself and the other faculty member. But, there were people who actually thought we had buried the hatchet, and we were now, the best of friends, embracing one another, holding hands. It was really, and there were people who believed it. I had other faculty members came up to me and said, wow, you and Linda are really getting along now. I said, no, we're really not. No, we're not getting along at all. Well, I saw it. Seeing is believing. I saw it on print. Okay, well, that was Photoshop. Now, Photoshop right now must seem primitive. It's primitive, isn't it? Compared to what artificial intelligence can do in terms of creating alternate realities, in terms of creating photographs, visual information that frankly, never happened, could never have happened, will never happen. But how many people, especially on social media, which is pretty much the virus for artificial intelligence, misinformation and disinformation, how many people see that, share it, spread it? And it's a little bit like in the olden days when there was a mistake made on the front page of a newspaper. They'd make a correction, it would be on page D3, 4 sections later. at least it got corrected, even if nobody ever saw it. Well, very few people saw it, but with AI, it spreads. Well, there's a term, the reason we use the word virus, it spreads like a virus, and it never gets pulled back. So that becomes reality for a lot of people. And we have so many examples of that, and you know them, and I don't need to enumerate them all, but they're in the book, and if you're interested, but also I'm sure you probably already know many of them, where there were attacks that never happened. there were pandemics, not the one that we actually know about, but there were pandemics that happened, but they never happened. There were battles that were fought, but they were never fought. And they're created visually, and they look really, really real. I remember so many years ago, Dan Rather, when he was the anchor and managing editor of the CBS Evening News, got called out a few times, but the one I'm referring to is a CBS News crew bought some video footage of a supposed battle. I think it was in Serbia. I could be wrong about that, but I think it was in Serbia. And CBS ran with it, and they created a whole package around it. We call it a package in TV news, a fully narrated piece. And so they created a whole package around it, spotlighted it, so forth and so on. And it turned out that the entire thing was literally staged. People in military uniforms pretending to shoot one another on a supposed battlefield. And it ended up not only being on CBS, but think about this. It ended up with the other networks, because this is the way networks are, news organizations are in general. It ended up with the others said, oh my God, they had that Serbian battle we don't have. What are we going to do? We got to get the Serbian battle. So they went out and found a way to find the same video. So how is that so different from AI? I think it's the rapidity of transmission. Back then you had 3 networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox wasn't even around then. And, the rapidity was such, it seems like a snail's pace now. If I did that now, or you did that now, or anybody did that now, or something similar, by the time we finish today, 1 million views, 1 million hits would be seen. And it would become truth to 1 million people, and maybe another million after they share it. So is that social media? Yeah. But is the means to the end AI? Yeah. Because now you can do that with a keystroke. You don't have to go out and hire actors and put them in military uniforms and have them shoot fake guns at each other. Come on. Now, why do you suppose that was done? Was it a joke? Maybe. But more than likely, somebody had a political agenda and wanted to make the other side look bad. Does that sound familiar? Making the other side look bad? Yeah, that happens a lot. So when I ask you, what are the telltale signs between when a human is doing a story and when AI is producing or creating a story? And I think create is the important word there, sometimes creating a story. Often the telltale sign is there's just something it doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. Why would this happen? Why would somebody do this today in this environment for what reason? Now, again, that presumes or assumes that we have a media literate world. And for years and years and years, as a faculty member here and teaching in other places and everything, I have heard this term media literacy. The one thing I've never seen? Media literacy. We put it on syllabi, we put it in courses, we create whole courses around media literacy. And yet people are getting fooled every day by these so-called deep fakes created by artificial intelligence and furthered and spread by social media. Most of you, you're all in college here. Well, not all, but most are. And some are faculty members like Dr. Biafora, Dr. Reich, and Dr. Elliott. We are both blissfully retired, by the way, but we've been around the faculty block a few times, quite a few times. We all get concerned about writing. And there's a piece from CBS Sunday Morning, which, by the way, how many of you watch CBS Sunday Morning? Wow, that's more than I thought. The rest of you, if you want to really see something that, again, don't take my word for it, it's the highest rated, not that that means everything, but it's the highest rated news program on conventional mainstream network television. And it is for a reason. Week after week, rating period after rating period, because they do long form stuff. And one of my favorite people is a guy named David Pogue. And David Pogue and I got to meet because of this book. And David he also writes for the New York Times. He has God knows how many books out. And he's just a really, really smart guy. And one of the great things about writing books, I've said this over and over again in different places at different times, one of the best things about writing books is, if you're lucky, you get to meet a lot of smart people. And David Pogue is somebody I've admired forever. Didn't think I'd ever meet him. And I didn't actually meet him. We did a Zoom together for the book. And he's all over this book. His fingerprints are very deep into it. The idea being that, and we already talked about this somewhat, that, if you're just looking for a bare bones storyline, AI can give that to you. That's not a problem. But what is lost in the making? And I think that for those of us, and I want to believe that what brought those of you who are journalism students here, I'd like to believe that most of you might have been drawn here because you believe that writing is an integral part of what it is that you want to do in life. Now, let's look at it another way. There was a person in that piece who said, let me see if I can remember and paraphrase it. I won't quote it, but I think I can paraphrase it fairly correctly. Said, we'll look back on this time as a seminal time, essentially when books are written by not people, but artificial intelligence. That's a very scary thought to a lot of people. On the other hand, I'm not sure it's that far-fetched. It may all go back, once again, to media literacy. If people value what it is that you are being taught to do, and that's a big if, then you will have a place in journalism. What makes people currently in journalism afraid is that they don't think they will have that place, because that place will be taken by automation. Now, does that make journalism so different? I don't think so. People who make cars were afraid that robots are going to make those cars. People who make cars say, but robots can't make cars as well as we do. How do we know that? Maybe they can. Is it us against the machines? That's a science fiction myth, or not a science fiction myth, but a science fiction plot line that we've seen for most of our lives in movies, on television. The robots are taking over. The robots are coming. The robots are coming. Okay. Journalists have a lot of things to be afraid of in this world. I'm not sure that artificial intelligence is necessarily at the top of that list. I think there are a lot more threatening problems to worry about. I'll put it in this context. Believe it or not, in doing this book, I found out that the automated elevator, there's one over there. Yeah. They're in just about every building with more than one floor. When do you think the automated elevator was invented? In other words, when was the elevator, not when was the elevator invented, but when was the elevator that you could push buttons on? And most of you, probably all of you, have never been in an elevator that had an elevator operator. How far back do you think elevators go? When were they first invented? Anybody know?
1800s.
Sorry?
1800s.
The 1800s, exactly. You already read the book. Good. No, I was just kidding. The 1800s. Wow. The first automated elevator was not put into buildings in New York first until the 1900s. Wonder why? Elevator operators had jobs. They were afraid of losing their jobs. So we couldn't have people operating their own elevators. Oh my God. What are we going to do with all those elevator operators? Right? So technology is threatening to people who want jobs and who need jobs. And I don't mean to make light of that. It's an important consideration in our society that people have gainful work and can pay their bills and can put food on the table. I get all of that. But isn't there a compromise somewhere along the way? The sewing machine. You know when the sewing machine was invented?
Yeah.
The 1600s. You know why the sewing machine never was into people's homes until 200 years later? Because Queen Elizabeth had a lot of problems with protests by all the people who were seamstresses. They didn't want to lose their jobs. Okay? So the invention of the sewing machine, those are just two examples. The invention of the self-operating elevator were squelched and put on the shelf for a century or more in each case because there was fear that people would lose their jobs. Now, if you're in journalism pursuing this major and you're not thinking about what kind of job you're going to have when you get out, somebody's not talking to you the right way. I'm sorry. I don't think it's Matt, because I think he's a realist. I'm sure you guys must hear from some of the faculty. You've got to learn to not be the person who loses their elevator operator job or the person who can't be a seamstress because everybody can sew for themselves now. You have to bring a value added. And that's what I think in the message in journalism education ought to be today, that you have to bring a value added. You have to be better than AI. You have to provide experience, context. Okay, you have to provide compelling narratives that an AI bot could not possibly write. So yeah, in a sense, it is you against the machines. So guess what? You're right there with auto workers. You're right there with everybody else who's afraid their jobs are going to be taken by technology. So let me give you some hope instead of some dismal vision of a dystopic future for journalists and journalism. I happen to think that there are going to be more jobs in journalism. There are going to be different kinds of jobs. Want to be a big player in journalism? Learn how to write a lead. Do all the things that they tell you to do in your journalism classes. Whether you have to do it on your own or whether you have a class that will teach you how to do it, become a player in artificial intelligence. Become a player. Because that's where the jobs are going to be. I don't have to like it. I don't have to endorse it. I don't have to prefer it. But I do have to tell you, if I'm being honest and conveying anything to you here today, that is the reality. So what I would suggest is, don't be afraid of artificial intelligence as a journalist or as a citizen. You're going to feel temporarily incompetent for a while, just like Joel Geisler said. But don't fear the future, because the future, if you don't embrace it, it will bury you. And that's just true. And you can ask people in any other field who no longer have jobs, and they thought those jobs were going to be there forever. And they're not. I do want to leave you with something hopeful, and I hope that is hopeful, because I don't want a dystopian vision here, because I don't believe in that. I really believe that young people can master the skills just like you did in multimedia, just like you did in social media, just like you have done in every other thing that you've had to adapt to. You know, I didn't grow up with a cell phone. You did. You mastered that early on. I didn't grow up with social media. You did. You mastered that early on. You now have an opportunity to grow up with artificial intelligence and master that too. And you can do it. I know you can. And I'm not going to do it, but you are. Let me leave you with some other hope. This is a piece and I hope we can listen to it all the way through, but even if we get a sense of it, there's a father, as you can see on the screen, whose son has a very rare illness. It's 1 in a million, literally maybe less than 1 in a million, if I recall correctly. And without AI, without artificial intelligence, this particular illness that his child has would never be being researched now.
Thomas Wagner and Stephanie Holzhuber always dreamed of becoming parents. Their 2-year-old Max arrived in 2022. He seemed perfectly healthy until one night when Max was 7 months old.
Stephanie was in panic and was like, Thomas, I think Max has a seizure. Max was really lying on his side and he clearly looked like he was having a seizure.
For weeks, he kept having seizures, and after genetic testing, a doctor told them Max had Alexander disease, and then said this.
At the moment, there's no treatment, no cure, and life expectancy is 5 to 10 years.
That's devastating.
Yeah.
Alexander disease is a rare genetic disorder affecting less than 1 in a million kids that progressively damages the nervous system.
This whole notion of there's nothing you can do, that's not right. There's always something you can do.
Thomas immediately started Googling.
What is Alexander disease? It's all these words that I just did not understand. Like Alexander disease is caused by a mutation of the GFAP gene in astrocytes. And
I don't even understand what you're saying. Since he works for YouTube, owned by Google, Thomas was familiar with Gemini and realized the AI chatbot could help him understand complicated research.
I can upload a paper or scientific article and I can go, hey, Gemini, can you explain this to me like at high school biology level? And so it translates these complex things into much more simpler explanations.
The AI could also compare scientific papers and find possible connections to his son's disorder.
They've identified these things and they look promising, like could that lead somewhere? Then I asked Gemini, can you help me draft an email to the author of this paper asking effectively if there might be an opportunity to explore this in Alexander disease.
I think he was super excited how quickly they actually responded.
One of his emails was to Dr. Pranam Chatterjee, an assistant professor at Duke.
Had you ever heard of Alexander disease?
No, I did not.
Pranam's lab looks for proteins that cause diseases. Using computer algorithms, their goal is to design drugs to wipe out those proteins. From what the AI told him, Thomas thought this lab could possibly create a drug for Alexander disease.
I thought I was talking to a scientist. It's like, this is a disease, my son has it, this is how it works. I think your technology can solve it.
Thomas helped raise funds, and Pranam's lab is now working to find a treatment.
I will spend the rest of my career doing this if it takes that long. We will find a cure.
In February, they met for the first time at a conference in Philadelphia.
There's no chance he would have been at that conference working on Alexander disease if I hadn't sent him that email. That's why I keep sending folks emails.
And it's because of Max, right?
For sure. Do you want to go inside?
Thomas and Stephanie say in a lot of ways, Max is just like any other toddler, a happy and curious boy with a big personality.
We sometimes say he's the mayor because wherever we go, he needs to wave at everyone and greet everyone, and he just loves people.
He enjoys playing, making music, being with others.
Because of Thomas, there are now 10 different research groups working to help kids like Max.
It feels like medicine sometimes happens in silos.
Correct.
Like people at one place don't know what the other place is doing.
It's not the easiest to make those connections, but Thomas did that.
After everything that Thomas has done, how are you feeling?
I'm less scared of the future.
I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a dad. Gemini has made me a dad that understands Alexander disease a little bit better, but I am really still just a dad who's trying to do the little I can do to make a difference.
Yeah.
Thomas is still in touch with dozens of different scientists. He told me he does a lot of emailing at night when Max is asleep, stays up late. Not all of them have started working on Alexander disease, but it is giving them hope, and he is not.
Okay, so positive use of artificial intelligence, and it's far from the only one, by the way. Medicine and science are areas where my God, the frontier for the threshold or the frontier for artificial intelligence to be helpful, useful, it is just limitless. The best example that I've heard in researching the book was the idea that customarily, I don't know how many times a day or how many times a week or a year, but it's not uncommon for somebody with a tumor to go to a doctor, a general practitioner, be referred to a specialist, be referred to another specialist, be referred to a third specialist. And they all shake their heads and go, I've never seen anything like that before. I don't know what it is. We'll do a biopsy. And in 2 or 3 weeks, maybe we'll find out what it is. I am not exaggerating when I tell you that in less than 30 seconds, a photograph of that tumor can be put into an AI program, and it will come back after scraping the universe of every tumor that's ever been known to mankind, to people kind, to civilization. It will come back and say, yeah, this is what it is. There it is. We know what it's called. And, oh, by the way, here's some suggestions for treatment. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So I don't want to leave you with this idea that this is a silo. And that's why I wanted you to see the last piece, because I think it shows that artificial intelligence can help break down silos. Journalists all around the world, like researchers and medical people and scientists all over the world, are researching cures. They're researching stories. They're researching stuff in their respective fields. But they don't know that other people are doing the same thing. So if we can use artificial intelligence, again, nothing is either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. If our thinking makes it so, that we find a way to connect these threads between people who are doing the same things, whether they're journalists or doctors or scientists or inventors, keep going, fill in the blank for yourself. You know, we can find a way to use it. We go way beyond the, frankly, pretty petty fear that, you know, maybe an artificial intelligence bot can write a story about, you know, a traffic accident better than a human being could. Okay? That's just the threshold. And, you know, that's not really high thinking either. So the bottom line is, I want to leave you with this, and then I'll take any questions, but, you know, I really think that the time to embrace this technology is here. It's now. And, you know, as a dean once told me in a very different context, it wasn't my former dean who's sitting over there now, but it was a dean at another university. When I resisted change, for some odd reason, he looked at me and he said, you know, Tony, I gotta tell you something. The status quo is not an option. And I walked out of that office and I went, I still don't embrace change.
It's tasty.
And you know what? It didn't do me any good, because change came. It rolled right over me. No. So there's a writer named Ken Kesey who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and there's a saying that he coined. It's, you know, you're on the bus or you're off the bus. Get on the bus. And in this case, the bus is artificial intelligence. And you can shape it. Don't let it shape you. Thanks a lot.